Thank you very much, Son. This, it seems, the same than what happens with nuclear power plants, no? Then were designed so many years ago that now we are having problems, because, of course, technology is not the same, and we need to upgrade and to redesign a lot of things. So not only nuclear power plants, also the internet must be redesigned or thinking in a different way. So let's go to our next speaker. It's Dave Mailer. He's coming from United Kingdom. And I would like to say United Kingdom Europe, because, okay. At least today it's United Kingdom Europe, okay. So, and Dave, thank you very much for coming. And he will talk about how are the communications working and the video and all these topics. Thank you, Dave.
Okay, thanks very much, Augustine. I think our identity in the UK isn't even as simple as British or European. I'm a very proud Scotsman, so we don't even know whether we're going to be part of the United Kingdom in a year or two's time, never mind Europe. Okay, I'm very pleased to be in Barcelona. One thing that's certainly consistent is that the weather at this time of year in Barcelona is better than it is in the UK. So I'm never sorry to have a few days here in Barcelona at this time of year. Just in terms of introducing myself very briefly, so I'm Dave Mailer. I am UK based. I do a lot of work in enterprise communications, working for large organisations in both the public and private sector. Do a lot of hospitals, a lot of universities, etc. And some of the work we've been doing very recently has been related to video communications. And it's a topic which has reared its head again after a number of years of being relatively stagnant. So hence the purpose of the title of my session today really is will social media sort of finally unleash video conferencing, and is it going to go to different places than it has in the past? As I say, my company 4C Strategies works very widely in this area in the UK, and we're doing a lot of work in this space. Things are changing in the video space, and I think the rise of social media is changing the outlook and the perception and expectations of video. And that's also happening at the same time that we've seen, as mentioned I think by Tom earlier, that the primary means of communications in an enterprise now isn't telephony anymore, it's this thing we call unified communications, which to a large extent, although the industry has been telling us that that's what we have to do for years, most organisations haven't really worked out why and what they're supposed to be doing with it yet. So what I'm going to do is go on to say that the conclusion of that is probably going to be that there is a need to develop video collaboration strategies within organisations, and we'll have a look at some of the fundamentals and the deployment challenges associated with that. I always like to start with a few statistics and a bit of background. So the historical driver for video conferencing and video collaboration has always been about the travel savings. It's the only real quantitative benefit that we've been able to put on video communication over, and I'll call it recent decades now, because I remember putting video conferencing systems in 25 years ago. Blue Jeans have done some data and have worked out that we can apparently, we're saving 7.5 billion miles of travel at the moment, saving $3.3 billion and 1.2 billion kilograms of CO2, which is 322,000 trees, which I guess in anybody's money is a big forest. So it's still something we're going to be going after, but I think what we're going to look at a little bit in some of the other statistics I'm going to show is that things have moved on. And one of the really interesting aspects is where we use video. Blue Jeans again did some surveying of people, asking them what they use video for, where they used it, and a really interesting statistic is that 62% of respondents use video at home and in their personal life, compared to 46% using it at work. So we've got a situation now where more people are using video in the home, or people who are using video are using it more often in the home than they're using it in the workspace. Another interesting statistic from some research that Cisco did, they asked people who would benefit the most from the increased use of video communications. Of the respondents, 70% said that they thought large teams could benefit and learn from improved video, but 94%, nearly every recipient, believed that small and medium enterprises could benefit by improved video communications and collaboration. So I think we can see that we're moving from that space where video is something that you do in a room which is specially kitted out to something that needs to be embedded within what we do all the time and every day. There's also some data on what devices are used to join meetings. And I think the interesting thing here is really that conference rooms, yes, are still 56%. A lot of people are going to a conference room to participate in a video session. But 77% of recipients, i.e. more than ever go to rooms, are using desktops and laptops. Only 30% believe that they really use telephones for collaboration and for meetings very often in this day and age. I suspect they're not really thinking about what they're doing, because I can't believe that only 30% of people participate in audio conferences. But it's seen as a less significant impact. And I think the statistic at the bottom, particularly since this is Mobile World Congress, is particularly interesting. This data goes back to 2015, and at that time, 30% of respondents said they use mobile devices for video communications. I suspect that is coming up very rapidly and will very, very quickly sort of meet the desktop and the laptop perspective. Another really interesting statistic is the average meeting size and duration. Back in 2014, an average meeting was 4 to 5 people and lasted 45 minutes. 18 months later, towards the end of 2015, it reduced to 36 minutes and was 3 to 4 participants. So again, it's no longer big, organised collaboration. It's much more ad hoc, something which is sorted out on the fly and between smaller groups of people. So the environment's changing. I guess we all know where it's come from, dedicated environments that were reserved for executives. I remember when, yes, I was involved in putting video conference systems in my early life as a consultant and a telecoms engineer 25 years ago, but I would never have been allowed to use the facility. It was reserved for execs in those days. But it was difficult to use, it was unreliable. We were certainly called in to try and fix it and keep it going. There's lots of challenges with those sorts of legacy arrangements. I'm not going to go through this slide. The slides are going to be distributed, but I'm sure anybody who's involved in video collaboration will recognise a lot of those items there. One very interesting thing is that the room environments were very poor. We didn't pay enough attention to the environment that we were taking those video communications in. We had lots and lots of different systems that didn't talk to each other. Yes, maybe having a video conference within your organisation might have worked, but the second you had to collaborate with somebody outside of the organisation, or somebody outside had to collaborate with you, you probably had to tell IT 4 weeks in advance and get them to set it up and do all the necessary testing. So it's not what we're used to now. What we used to do with social media is we just press a button and we can communicate using video with anybody immediately. And just said a key thing that's changed there is social media. I think the advent of desktop unified communications is also a key change that's bringing it to the enterprise. We've had unified communications for some years now. Actually, most of us have had the ability to do video communications on our desktops probably for 5 to 10 years, but not made very much use of it. So the basis is there. There isn't actually a big step to be made to enable video within the desktop environment. Another very interesting aspect is the emergence of cloud-based solutions. I think we've heard cloud mentioned at least once earlier today. One of the big opportunities that cloud brings is a way to, I'm going to pick my words carefully with security experts, both on the legal side and the technical side down the end of the table. But security's been a big problem on video conferencing because we don't want to open our networks to let lots of people come in and connect into our organisations. If we use the cloud as a bridge, then we can control outgoing communications from our organisations, and it makes that a lot easier. We don't have to open our firewalls up and let anybody come in and connect to our video systems. We've also got, I'll come on to in a moment, the solutions are much more functional in their organisation than they used to be. So that helps us to put it into the context of real business requirements. So what are the benefits? Well, reduced travel costs are always going to be there, and it's the single sort of quantifiable, measurable item from all of this. But there's lots of other benefits that we can achieve in the way in which we work by bringing video to into everyday working within the enterprise. Accelerated timelines, the ability to do things more quickly because the right people can communicate at the right time is a significant benefit. Another area is properly informed decision making. It's very easy when a decision has to be taken now with the right communications and collaboration in place to get those people together in the right place, albeit virtually, at the right time. No longer do we take provisional decisions and then have to refer them to executives and management within the organisation. It should be possible to involve those decision makers and those approvers in the decision making right at the outset. And then we have reduced delivery costs, and this relates to what I was talking about, sort of functional-based solutions. We're not just putting in, or we shouldn't just be putting in video conferencing for the sake of it. The industry is much more moving towards solutions that meet the vertical activity of a particular organisation. Telemedicine is a big area which can benefit from this. Again, we've had telemedicine for 20 years, but the advent of high-definition video on these sorts of devices means that actually it's really coming into its own, and it can really move out into the environment and benefit people in a much more rapid manner. Distance-based learning, we do a lot of work in universities. The opportunity to have genuine distance-based learning where it's not just delivering a lecture to the participants at the other end, but offering them the opportunity to participate in that in a real-time basis by asking questions, possibly via text, chat, or via actually video streams, really opens up those opportunities for educational institutions to expand the reach that they have. A couple of other areas we've identified recently in terms of recruitment, support functions, and sales are other sort of vertical sectors which are benefiting very much from video collaboration. So, what are the fundamentals of a strategy for video? Well, I think the key aspect to the outset is it's got to be as easy to use as making a phone call. Everybody knows how to make a phone call. You don't need to train your users how to use a phone. Maybe with some complex IP phones, there's an argument that you do, but you shouldn't have to. And nobody trains anybody how to use their smartphone at home in this day and age. It's got to be accessible from any device and location. We don't want to have to force people to go to meetings, to video meetings. I work with a number of universities that have got campuses where it can take half an hour to cross campus to a video conferencing room. Or you might as well get in the car and drive to where the meeting is taking place if that's the case. It's got to be able to be done where those participants are at the time they want to collaborate. And we've got the technology to do that. It's got to work internally and externally. We've had situations to a large extent where video collaboration has been an island in the past. To some extent, using bridging services that cost a fortune from the large carriers, we've been able to do something with rooms in the past, but desktop unified communications has very much been an island as different vendors haven't interoperated properly. We've got to look at that interoperation when we start that process, because there is no point in trying to do it purely within an enterprise and an organisation. And finally, you've got to look at the affordability of the solution and the content and the solutions you're going to put in place. And that's really about return on investment. It costs money to do any sort of project to put in place these sorts of capabilities and technologies, but there should be a return on investment through improved business practices and in some instances improved revenues as well. Okay. There are a lot of deployment challenges. These are the sorts of things that as a consultant you'd expect me to say we can come and help with. A lot of the things on here are things that we've learned through the real life experience of working with our clients, and a lot of them are not the obvious things that you would expect. I mean, I'll pick one out there in terms of the use of screen real estate is something that a lot of solutions don't manage very well. As soon as you go into a collaboration session, you lose the video, or your camera blanks out what's on their screen for the people at the other end. So getting that right is quite important. And building the culture of this sort of collaboration into your organisation is a challenge. I think training in the old sense of telling somebody how to do something isn't going to make a project like this successful, but getting it into the culture of the way in which they work on a daily basis will make it successful. And if we do that right, people will actually effectively train themselves, because they will want to use the technology and they'll go out there and work out how to use it. So, I guess just in summary, do I believe there's a new dawn for video collaboration? And yes, I do. I think the stars are aligning in terms of the demand that's coming from the user base because of what they're seeing in their consumer space with social media, and also the fact that we have got the broad fundamentals of the technologies in place now, but the fact we've got unified communications of a sort. Maybe it needs upgrading and changing, but most organisations have got something along those lines in place. So I guess the messages which I'm delivering to my clients are: be aware and be ready, and be ahead of the curve. Know what you're going to do in these areas before your users and your customers are clamouring at your door.